The icy winds howled across the barren expanse of an alien planet, a world shrouded in perpetual twilight. The ground was covered with frost so thick it sparkled like crushed diamonds under the dim glow of two distant suns. In this desolate landscape, a lone figure staggered forward, her once vivid blue skin now pale and mottled from exposure to the biting cold. Her name was Lyrian, one of the last surviving members of the Zytheri, a species known throughout galaxies for their ethereal beauty and advanced intellect. But here she was, broken and fading, her regal posture reduced to desperate survival. Lyrian had been part of an expedition sent to explore this uncharted planet, hoping to find resources that could save her dying homeworld. What they hadn't anticipated was the hostile environment or the malfunctioning technology that left them stranded. One by one, her crew succumbed to the elements until only she remained, wandering aimlessly through endless fields of frozen tundra. Her breath came in ragged gasps, each exhale forming clouds of vapor that disappeared almost instantly into the frigid air. She clutched at her side where a jagged piece of metal protruded from her abdomen, a souvenir from the crash that had claimed the lives of her companions. Blood seeped slowly from the wound, freezing as it met the open air. Despite the agony coursing through her body, Lyrian pressed on, driven by sheer willpower. She couldn't let herself die, not yet. Not when there might still be hope. Hope came in the form of faint vibrations beneath her feet. At first, she thought it was another tremor caused by the planet's unstable crust. But then she heard something else, voices. Human voices. They were distant but unmistakable, carried on the wind like whispers of salvation. Gathering what little strength she had left, Lyrian forced herself toward the sound, stumbling over uneven terrain and slipping on patches of ice. Each step felt like fire lancing through her veins, but she refused to stop. As she crested a small ridge, she saw them. A group of humans clad in heavy armor, trudging through the snow. Their leader, a tall man with broad shoulders and a face weathered by years of hardship, scanned the horizon with sharp eyes. His name was Captain Elias Drake, a soldier who had seen more battles than he cared to count. He wasn't expecting to encounter anyone out here, especially not someone who looked like they belonged in a dream or a nightmare. "Captain?" one of his men called out, pointing toward Lyrian. "Over there." Elias turned just in time to see the alien woman collapse onto the snow, her shimmering silver hair fanning out around her like a halo. Without hesitation, he sprinted toward her, shouting orders to his team. When he reached her, he knelt down, brushing away strands of hair to reveal her delicate features. Her skin was icy to the touch, and her breathing shallow, but she was alive. Barely. "Medic!" Elias barked, scooping her up effortlessly despite the weight of his gear. "We need to get her back to base." His medic rushed over, already pulling out thermal blankets and medical supplies. Together, they wrapped Lyrian tightly to preserve her body heat while assessing her injuries. The shard of metal lodged in her side was concerning, but removing it in the field without proper tools could do more harm than good. For now, all they could do was stabilize her and hope she held on long enough to reach safety. Back at their temporary encampment, a cluster of prefabricated domes nestled against a rocky outcrop, the team worked tirelessly to treat Lyrian's wounds. Inside the largest dome, which served as both command center and infirmary, Elias kept watch over her as the medic performed emergency surgery. It was risky business. None of them had ever treated an alien before, let alone one as fragile-looking as her. But Elias had always believed in doing whatever it took to protect those in need, regardless of race or origin. Hours passed, and finally, the medic stepped back, wiping sweat from his brow. "She's stable," he announced, relief evident in his voice. "But we'll need to monitor her closely. That wound is nasty, and she's lost a lot of blood." Elias nodded grimly, pulling up a chair beside Lyrian's makeshift bed. As he sat there, studying her serene face, he couldn't help but wonder about the circumstances that had brought her to such a dire state. Who was she? Where had she come from? And why had she been alone in such a godforsaken place? When Lyrian finally stirred, it was to the soft hum of machinery and the warmth of blankets cocooning her body. Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing iridescent green eyes that seemed to shimmer even in the low light. Confusion clouded her expression as she took in her surroundings, her gaze eventually landing on Elias, who sat nearby cleaning his rifle. "You're awake," he said gently, setting the weapon aside. "How are you feeling?" Her lips parted, but no sound came out at first. Then, haltingly, she spoke in heavily accented English. "Where am I?" In our camp, Elias replied. You were injured pretty badly. We patched you up as best we could. Lyrian blinked slowly, processing his words. Why? Did you help me? He shrugged, offering a small smile. Because it's the right thing to do. For a moment, she simply stared at him, as if trying to decipher some hidden meaning behind his words. Then, unexpectedly, a flicker of amusement danced across her face. Humans, she murmured, almost to herself. Always so predictable. Elias chuckled, leaning back in his chair. Predictable? Is that what you think? It's what I've observed, she countered, her voice growing stronger. Your kind is governed by emotions, compassion, fear, loyalty. You act on impulse rather than logic. Well, maybe that's not such a bad thing, Elias suggested. Logic doesn't always get the job done. Lyrian tilted her head, considering his response. Perhaps, but tell me, human, why are you here, on this forsaken rock? The question caught him off guard, though he shouldn't have been surprised. Of course she'd want answers. We're explorers, he explained. Like you, I imagine. Looking for resources, new worlds to understand. Survival, mostly. Her expression darkened slightly. Survival. Yes, I know much about that. They fell silent then, each lost in their own thoughts. Outside, the wind continued its mournful song, battering the walls of the dome. Yet inside, there was a strange sense of calm, a fragile connection forming between two beings from vastly different worlds. Over the next few days, Lyrian regained her strength, though her recovery was slow and painful. She spent most of her time observing the humans, fascinated by their interactions and quirks. They were rough around the edges, hardened by years of conflict and hardship, yet there was an undeniable camaraderie among them. They joked, argued, and supported one another in ways that reminded her of her own people, before everything fell apart. Elias, in particular, intrigued her. There was a quiet intensity about him, a sense of purpose that went beyond mere duty. He didn't speak much about himself, but she could see the weight of experience etched into every line of his face. During their conversations, she learned fragments of his story. A soldier who had fought in countless wars, who had seen friends and enemies alike fall victim to greed and violence. Yet, despite it all, he retained a core of decency that refused to be extinguished. One evening, as they sat together near the entrance of the dome, watching the twin suns dip below the horizon, Lyrian decided to share a piece of her own past. My world, she began softly, was once beautiful, vibrant cities floating above oceans of liquid crystal, forests that sang melodies as the wind passed through their leaves. My people were scholars, artists, dreamers. What happened? Elias asked, his tone gentle but probing. A plague, she whispered, her voice trembling. A sickness born of our own hubris. We meddled with forces we didn't fully understand, and it consumed us. Billions dead within months. Those who survived fled, searching for a cure or a new home. And your expedition? He prompted. We thought this planet might hold answers, she admitted bitterly. Instead, it became our tomb. Elias absorbed her words in silence, his jaw tightening. He wanted to offer comfort, to tell her that everything would be okay, but he knew better. False reassurances wouldn't change the reality of her situation. Instead, he reached out, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder. I'm sorry, he said simply. To his surprise, she smiled, a sad, fleeting smile that made her look impossibly young. Thank you, she replied, for saving me, for listening. Their bond deepened with each passing day, forged in the crucible of shared pain and mutual respect. But not everyone in the camp was pleased with their growing closeness. Some of Elias's men viewed Lyrian with suspicion, whispering among themselves about the risks of harboring an alien. Others were openly hostile, their prejudice fueled by decades of interstellar conflict. It came to a head one morning when Corporal Hayes, a grizzled veteran with a chip on his shoulder, confronted Elias outside the infirmary. Sir, permission to speak freely? Go ahead, Elias replied warily. This thing, Hayes spat, jerking a thumb toward the dome where Lyrian rested. What are we doing babysitting some alien princess while we're stuck out here freezing our asses off? She's a liability, plain and simple. She's a sentient being, Elias shot back, his voice hardening. And she's injured. We don't leave anyone behind. Hayes. That includes her. Hayes sneered, clearly unconvinced. With all due respect, sir, you're making a mistake. Mark my words, This isn't gonna end well. Elias clenched his fists, resisting the urge to put the corporal in his place. Instead, he dismissed him with a curt nod, turning away before he said something he'd regret. But the encounter left a bitter taste in his mouth, a reminder of the challenges they faced, not just from the environment, but from within their own ranks. Later that day, Lyrian approached Elias as he stood alone on a hill overlooking the camp. "I heard what happened," she said quietly. "The argument with your subordinate. He doesn't speak for everyone," Elias assured her. "Most of my men are good people. They'll come around." "But not all of them," she countered, her voice tinged with resignation. "I understand their fear, Elias. To them, I am an outsider, a threat." "You're not a threat," he insisted firmly. "Not to me, and not to anyone else here." She studied him for a long moment, her luminous eyes searching his face. "You have a generous heart, human, but generosity can be dangerous." Before Elias could respond, a sudden commotion erupted from the direction of the camp. Shouts rang out, followed by the unmistakable sound of gunfire. Both of them turned sharply, hearts pounding. "What the hell?" Elias muttered, breaking into a run. Lyrian followed close behind, her movements still stiff but determined. As they neared the camp, they saw chaos unfolding. Several of the domes had collapsed, their structural integrity compromised by some unseen force. Men scrambled to gather weapons and defend themselves, while others dragged the injured to safety. "What's going on?" Elias demanded, grabbing one of his lieutenants by the arm. "Don't know, sir." The man shouted over the din. "Something hit us, fast and hard." Elias scanned the area, his instincts screaming danger. Then he spotted movement in the distance, shadowy figures emerging from the swirling snow. They weren't human. "Get everyone inside the main dome," he ordered. "Now!" As his men scrambled to comply, Elias turned to Lyrian, his expression grim. "Stay close to me," he commanded. "Whatever's coming, we're not ready for it." She nodded, gripping his arm tightly. Together, then, the shadowy figures drew nearer, revealing grotesque forms that seemed to shift and writhe unnaturally. Their bodies were covered in jagged plates of ice, and their glowing red eyes burned with malevolent intelligence. With a guttural roar, they charged, moving with terrifying speed. Elias raised his weapon, firing a burst of plasma rounds that struck one of the creatures squarely in the chest. It staggered but didn't fall, its icy armor absorbing the impact. Beside him, Lyrian acted instinctively, raising her hands and unleashing a pulse of energy that sent several of the attackers sprawling. "Didn't know you could do that," Elias remarked, impressed despite the dire situation. "There's a lot you don't know about me," she replied wryly, ducking as another creature lunged at them. Together, they fought back to back, their movements synchronized in a deadly dance. Elias relied on brute force and precision, while Lyrian used bursts of energy and quick reflexes to keep the creatures at bay. But for every one they felled, two more seemed to take its place. "We can't hold them off forever," Elias shouted, narrowly avoiding a swipe from razor-sharp claws. "Then we retreat," Lyrian yelled back. "Fall back to the dome." With great effort, they managed to disengage, retreating toward the relative safety of the main structure. Behind them, the creatures hesitated, as if wary of following them indoors. Taking advantage of the reprieve, Elias slammed the reinforced door shut and activated the locking mechanism. Inside, the survivors regrouped, tending to the wounded and fortifying their position. The mood was tense, the air thick with fear and uncertainty. But amidst the turmoil, Elias and Lyrian exchanged a glance, their shared determination unwavering. Whatever these things were, they weren't leaving without a fight. The survivors huddled inside the main dome, the tension palpable as they braced for another attack. Outside, the creatures continued their eerie vigil, pacing like predators waiting for an opportunity to strike. The cold seeped through the walls, making the atmosphere inside almost unbearable despite the heaters running at full blast. Elias moved among his men, offering reassurance and barking orders to reinforce weak points in their defenses. But his mind kept drifting back to Lyrian. She stood near the center of the room, her arms crossed tightly over her chest as she stared at the barricaded entrance. Her earlier display of power had stunned everyone, including herself if the look on her face was any indication. When Elias approached her, he noticed the faint tremor in her hands. He placed a firm but gentle hand on her shoulder, drawing her attention. "You okay?" he asked quietly, his voice cutting through the din of nervous chatter and metallic clangs as tools were used to fortify the structure. Lyrian hesitated before nodding, though her eyes betrayed her unease. I I didn't know I could do that, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. My people aren't warriors. We haven't needed to be, not for centuries. That energy pulse, it shouldn't have been possible. Elias frowned, studying her closely. Maybe it's this place, he suggested. Something about this planet might be unlocking abilities you didn't know you had. Or maybe it's something else entirely, she murmured cryptically, glancing toward the door again. She didn't elaborate further, leaving Elias with more questions than answers. Before he could press her for details, Corporal Hayes stormed up to them, his face flushed with anger. Captain, we need to decide what to do with her, he spat, glaring at Lyrian. This mess started when she showed up. Those things out there, they're after her, no doubt about it. That's enough, Hayes, Elias snapped, stepping between the two. We don't know what's going on yet, so stop jumping to conclusions. Hayes clenched his fists but backed down reluctantly, muttering under his breath as he walked away. Lyrian watched him go, her expression unreadable. Once he was out of earshot, she turned to Elias. He may be right, she said softly. These creatures, they feel familiar somehow, like echoes of something ancient and terrible. Elias felt a chill run down his spine, though whether from her words or the growing sense of dread in the air, he couldn't tell. What are you saying? I'm saying. She paused, choosing her words carefully. There's a reason my people came here. This planet isn't just barren wasteland. It's a graveyard, a prison for something that should never have been released. Elias opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, the ground beneath them shuddered violently. Everyone froze, staring at each other in alarm as the trembling grew stronger. Then, with a deafening roar, the roof of the dome collapsed inward, sending shards of metal and chunks of ice raining down on them. Chaos erupted once more as the shadowy creatures poured in, their glowing red eyes filled with malice. In the ensuing melee, Elias found himself fighting side by side with Lyrian again, their bond strengthening with every passing moment. They moved like extensions of each other, anticipating one another's actions without needing to communicate. At one point, a creature lunged at Elias, its claws inches from tearing into him, but Lyrian intervened with another pulse of energy that sent the beast flying backward. She stumbled afterward, clearly drained, but Elias caught her before she could fall. You can't keep doing that, he growled, half scolding, half worried. You'll burn yourself out. And let you die instead? She shot back, managing a weak smile despite the exhaustion evident in her voice. Not happening, human. Their banter was interrupted by a sudden lull in the battle. The remaining creatures withdrew slightly, forming a loose circle around the survivors. In their midst stepped a figure unlike the others, taller, its icy armor gleaming with unnatural light. Its presence radiated authority, and its piercing gaze locked onto Lyrian. You, it rasped, its voice echoing unnaturally. You carry the mark of the ancients. Lyrian stiffened, her eyes widening in recognition. No, she whispered, shaking her head. It can't be. What is it talking about? Elias demanded, gripping his weapon tighter. Lyrian, what does it mean? Instead of answering, she stepped forward, her movements deliberate despite her obvious fear. Who are you? She called out, her voice steady but tinged with desperation. Why have you come? The creature tilted its head, studying her intently. You are the last heir of Zethar, it declared, its tone almost reverent. The final keeper of the shard. The shard, Elias echoed, confused. What shard? Lyrian's shoulders slumped as understanding dawned. Slowly, she reached up to touch the pendant hanging around her neck, a small, crystalline object that shimmered faintly even in the dim light. This, she said, holding it out for Elias to see. It's not just a trinket. It's a fragment of something far older and more powerful than I ever imagined. Realization hit Elias like a punch to the gut. That thing, the crash, your ship, all of it was because of this shard? Not just mine, Lyrian corrected grimly. There are others scattered across the galaxy. Pieces of a weapon capable of unimaginable destruction. My ancestors created it, then broke it apart to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. But now, she trailed off, swallowing hard. Now someone, or something, is trying to put it back together. The creature raised a clawed hand, pointing directly at her. You will surrender the shard, or we will take it by force. Elias instinctively stepped in front of Lyrian, shielding her with his body. "Over my dead body," he snarled, raising his rifle. The creature let out a low, guttural laugh. "As you wish." Without warning, the attackers surged forward again, overwhelming the humans with sheer numbers. Despite their best efforts, the survivors were pushed back until only Elias and Lyrian remained standing, cornered against a pile of debris. Exhaustion and injuries slowed their movements, and it became clear they wouldn't last much longer. Just as all hope seemed lost, Lyrian made a decision. Grabbing Elias's arm, she pulled him close. "Trust me," she pleaded, her eyes locking onto his. "Close your eyes and hold on tight." Confused but willing to follow her lead, Elias obeyed. A split second later, a blinding flash of light engulfed them both, accompanied by a sensation of weightlessness. When he opened his eyes again, they were no longer in the dome, but standing on a rocky ledge overlooking a vast canyon carved into the frozen landscape. "What the hell was that?" Elias gasped, looking around in disbelief. "A gift from the shard," Lyrian explained, breathing heavily. "It allowed us to escape, but it won't last long. Those things will find us soon enough." Elias stared at her, torn between awe and frustration. "You've got some explaining to do. You know that, right?" She nodded, guilt flashing across her features. "I know, and I will. But first, we need to get somewhere safe." Reluctantly agreeing, Elias followed her as she led the way down the treacherous slope. As they navigated the icy terrain, their conversation deepened. Lyrian shared more about her people's history, the creation of the shard, and the devastating consequences of its misuse. She spoke of her guilt for not realizing sooner what the expedition truly sought, and how her failure had cost countless lives. Elias listened intently, his respect for her growing with every revelation. For all her flaws and secrets, she carried burdens heavier than anyone should bear, and yet she refused to give up. In turn, he opened up about his own struggles, sharing stories of battles won and lost, friendships forged and broken. By the time they reached the relative safety of a shallow cave, their connection had evolved into something deeper, more profound. But their respite was short-lived. As night fell, casting the world in shades of blue and silver, the sound of crunching footsteps echoed outside the cave. The creatures had found them. "This isn't over," Elias muttered, checking his weapon. "No," Lyrian agreed, clutching the shard tightly. "But neither are we." Side by side, they prepared to face whatever came next, their bond unshakable in the face of uncertainty. The creatures approached the cave with a deliberate slowness that was almost predatory, their glowing red eyes cutting through the darkness like beacons. Elias and Lyrian exchanged a glance, wordlessly reaffirming their resolve. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. Lyrian stepped forward, her grip tightening on the shard pendant. The faint glow emanating from it seemed to pulse in time with her heartbeat, as if responding to her emotions. "They're drawn to this," she whispered, more to herself than to Elias. "It's not just a weapon, it's a beacon." "Then maybe it's time we used it," Elias replied firmly, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "You said it has power. Use it." Her eyes widened slightly, torn between fear and determination. "I don't know how," she admitted. "If I make a mistake, I could destroy us or worse." "You won't," Elias said without hesitation. "You're stronger than you think, Lyrian. Trust yourself." His unwavering faith in her struck a chord deep within her. For so long, she had carried the weight of her people's legacy alone, burdened by guilt and doubt. But now, standing beside someone who believed in her unconditionally, she felt something stir inside, a spark of hope. Taking a deep breath, Lyrian closed her eyes and focused on the shard. She let its energy flow into her, feeling it course through her veins like liquid fire. Memories flooded her mind, images of her ancestors forging the weapon, fragmenting it, scattering its pieces across the stars. And then she saw something else, a vision of unity, of light banishing shadow. It wasn't destruction she held in her hands, it was balance. When she opened her eyes again, they shimmered with an otherworldly brilliance. "Stay behind me," she instructed, her voice calm but commanding. Elias nodded, stepping back but keeping his rifle ready. The lead creature lunged at them, its claws gleaming like shards of ice. Lyrian raised her hand, and a wave of radiant energy erupted from the shard, engulfing the creature in a blinding light. Instead of disintegrating or collapsing, however, the creature froze mid-motion, suspended in place as though trapped in amber. One by one, the others met the same fate, until all that remained were statuesque figures encased in translucent crystal. Elias stared in awe, lowering his weapon. What did you do? I didn't destroy them, Lyrian explained softly, her voice tinged with wonder. I sealed them away. Their essence is contained within the crystals, unable to harm anyone ever again. But how? Elias asked, still grappling with what he'd just witnessed. The shard isn't meant for destruction, it's meant for containment, she replied. My ancestors created it to imprison threats like these, not to unleash devastation. I think they always intended for someone to rediscover its true purpose. Elias smiled faintly, shaking his head. And here I thought you were just some gorgeous alien woman who needed saving. Lyrian laughed, the sound soft and melodic. Perhaps we saved each other. In the days that followed, the two worked together to ensure the crystals containing the creatures were secured far from any living beings. Using equipment salvaged from the wreckage of their respective ships, they devised a way to bury the crystals deep beneath the planet's surface, where they would remain undisturbed for millennia. As they prepared to part ways, Elias found himself reluctant to say goodbye. So what now? He asked, leaning against the hull of his repaired shuttle. Will you go back to your people? Find the other shards. Lyrian hesitated, gazing out at the horizon where the twin suns cast long shadows over the frostbitten landscape. There's nothing left for me among my people, she admitted quietly. But there are others out there who might still need help. Maybe I can find the remaining shards before whoever sent those creatures does. And what about Earth? Elias pressed gently. You've seen humanity at its worst, but there's good too. You could start over. She turned to look at him, her luminous green eyes filled with gratitude and affection. You're tempting me, human, but my path lies elsewhere for now. Besides, she added with a teasing smile, you've already done enough saving for one lifetime. Elias chuckled, though the sadness in his expression betrayed his feelings. Just promise me you'll come back someday. Humanity could use more people like you. I'll hold you to that, she replied, stepping closer to embrace him. The warmth of her touch lingered even after she pulled away. Thank you, Elias, for everything. With that, she activated the cloaking device on her own small vessel, vanishing from sight. Elias watched the empty space where she had stood, feeling both pride and loss. He knew their paths might never cross again, but the impact she'd had on him would stay forever. Months later, Elias returned to Earth, hailed as a hero for surviving the perilous mission. Yet when reporters asked about his experiences, he spoke little of the battles or hardships. Instead, he told stories of courage, compassion, and an extraordinary woman who had taught him that even in the darkest corners of the universe, light could still prevail. Unbeknownst to him, Lyrian continued her journey, guided by the shard's wisdom and driven by the memory of the human soldier who had shown her kindness when she needed it most. Together, though separated by galaxies, they carried forward the legacy of hope, one act of bravery at a time. And somewhere, in the vast expanse of space, the shard pulsed faintly, a reminder that no matter how far apart they were, their bond remained unbroken. The years that followed their fateful encounter on the frostbitten planet were ones of growth, discovery, and an unshakable bond between Elias Drake and Lyrian. Though their paths had initially diverged after parting ways, destiny seemed determined to bring them back together. Lyrian's quest to locate the remaining shards took her across galaxies, where she encountered both peril and wonder. Along the way, she often found herself reflecting on Elias, the steadfast human soldier whose unwavering belief in her had unlocked a strength she never knew she possessed. Meanwhile, Elias returned to Earth but struggled to settle into the mundane routine of life without her. His thoughts drifted constantly to the alien woman who had captured not just his admiration, but also his heart. Their reunion came unexpectedly during one of Lyrian's missions. While tracking a shard hidden deep within a remote nebula, her ship suffered critical damage, forcing her to make an emergency landing on a human colony world. To her astonishment, it was Elias who led the rescue team sent to investigate the crash site. When he saw her step out of the wreckage, alive and as radiant as ever, Elias couldn't help but laugh, a mix of relief and disbelief. You know, he said with a grin, most people send a message when they want to visit. Lyrian smiled, her eyes shimmering with emotion. I didn't plan this, she admitted, but perhaps fate has other ideas. That chance meeting reignited the connection they shared, stronger than before. Over the following weeks, They worked side by side to repair Lyrian's ship while rediscovering the joy of each other's company. Their conversations stretched late into the nights, filled with laughter, stories, and quiet moments of understanding. It became clear to both of them that their lives were meant to intertwine. One evening, under the soft glow of twin moons, Elias finally voiced what had been in his heart for so long. Taking Lyrian's hands in his, he looked deeply into her luminous green eyes. "Stay with me," he said simply. "Not because you need saving this time, but because I can't imagine my life without you." Tears welled up in Lyrian's eyes as she nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, Elias, I'll stay." Their wedding was a celebration unlike any other, a blending of human traditions and Zythari customs, attended by friends from both worlds. The ceremony took place on a hill overlooking the ocean, where the waves sparkled like stardust under the sun. As they exchanged vows, promising to stand by each other through all the challenges the universe might throw their way, it felt as though the stars themselves aligned to bless their union. In the years that followed, Elias and Lyrian built a peaceful life together, settling on a quiet coastal town where the air carried the scent of saltwater and blooming flowers. They welcomed 2 children into their family, a boy named Kale, who inherited his mother's iridescent eyes and quick wit, and a girl named Amara, whose adventurous spirit mirrored her father's courage. Life wasn't without its trials, of course. There were days when Lyrian wrestled with the weight of her past, haunted by memories of the plague that had ravaged her homeworld. But Elias was always there to remind her that she was no longer alone, that together, they could face anything. In turn, Lyrian taught him to embrace the beauty of vulnerability, showing him that strength could be found in love and connection. Kale and Amara grew up surrounded by tales of their parents' adventures, their imaginations fueled by stories of alien worlds, ancient artifacts, and battles fought against impossible odds. Yet even as they dreamed of exploring the stars, they cherished the simple joys of home, the sound of waves crashing against the shore, the warmth of family dinners, and the laughter that echoed through their house. Elias and Lyrian dedicated themselves to fostering peace between humans and aliens, using their unique perspectives to bridge divides and build alliances. Together, they established a sanctuary for those displaced by conflict, offering refuge and hope to countless beings from across the galaxy. Through their efforts, they proved that unity was possible, even among the most unlikely of allies. As the years passed, Elias and Lyrian grew older, their hair streaked with silver and their faces lined with wisdom earned through experience. Yet their love remained as vibrant as ever, a beacon of light in a sometimes darkened universe. Sitting together on their porch one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Elias reached for Lyrian's hand. "You've given me more than I ever thought possible," he said softly. "A family, a purpose, a lifetime of happiness. And you've given me a home," Lyrian replied, leaning her head against his shoulder. "Not just here," she gestured to the house behind them, "but in your heart. That's something I'll treasure forever."